Clorox Sentiva smells like grapefruit. Cleans like Clorox. And feels like...
Okay, we could be here all day. Try Clorox Sentiva for a trusted clean with long-lasting freshness. Also available in lavender and coconut. Use as directed.
Choosing a bottled Starbucks Frappuccino drink that's all flavor and just 100 calories? Easy. Choosing between creamy vanilla, double chocolate, and sea salt caramel flavors? A little harder. Try the delicious new Starbucks Frappuccino light drinks. Look for them wherever you buy groceries. Start with Starbucks coffee.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
People love him and respect him. Roger Stone.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome. You are entering the Stone Zone. Well, President Donald Trump has declassified the Crossfire Hurricane documents. These are the documents that pertain to the Russian collusion hoax. Interestingly, he ordered the declassification of these documents at the very end of his first term, and the bureaucrats in the National Security Agency simply ignored him because they knew that he wouldn't be president in a few short days. Two journalists, John Solomon and Lou Dobbs, who had actually been legally given the declassified documents, found them quickly reclaimed by the U.S. government, and they were never released. If you want to know why the FBI raided President Donald Trump's home at Mar-a-Lago, the same way they raided my home at 6 o'clock in the morning, well, in his case, it was to get those documents back because, you see, as president, he was entitled to keep a copy of them. The whole notion that he was illegally withholding documents that he had no right to was absurd because under the Presidential Records Act, his mere possession constituted declassification, and as president and a former president, he had the right to have any document he wishes. The entire prosecution of Donald Trump was about those documents. That's because they show that Barack Obama and Vice President Joe Biden and National Security Advisor Susan Rice and FBI Director James Comey and CIA Director John Brennan and Deputy Director Andrew McCabe and others were involved in the greatest single illicit, illegal, dirty trick in American political history. It was nothing less than the use of the full authority of the United States government and the extraordinary capability of our intelligence agencies utilizing two pieces of what they knew were bogus fabricated evidence, the so-called Steele dossier, and the claim that the Russians had hacked the Democrat National Committee on an online hack to try to illicitly undo a presidential election and remove a duly elected president. This is, by the way, treason. So you ask, as I do, when are those who perpetrated this treasonous crime going to be punished? It's an excellent question. Now, Barack Obama is probably, based on that, calls himself Kravis. His real name is Kravis. He filed a document, a SIR reply with the court when I proved that the FBI had never investigated the computer servers of the DNC, had relied on the claim of a partisan IT firm called CrowdStrikes for the false claim that the Russians had hacked the DNC. He filed a
Why'd I go to the doctor?
With the court called a SIR reply, in which he said the government had additional evidence of this online hack, but they couldn't show it to the court for national security purposes. In other words, they didn't have one. So when will these people be punished? When will they be held accountable? I do appreciate the fact that when you're taking over the federal government, particularly one that has been ensconced in power this long, and particularly since in his first term, despite the fact that he was a very great president, he still did not replace the second and third levels of the permanent bureaucracy, what Dwight Eisenhower used to call the military-industrial complex, that he is still dealing with a handful of dependable people at the top of every one of these agencies. And then below them, you have people who are seditionists, people who are bureaucrats, or people who have went in as political appointees, but then had their positions converted to be civil servants, and they're there to undermine your process. A hearing yesterday in the Southern District of New York pertaining to one of these crypto moguls, the Justice Department has put out a new memo as to how such cases should be handled. And the government actually argued in court, again, out of the Southern District of New York, that memo doesn't pertain to our actions here in court. We don't answer to Main Justice. No, yes, they do. Actually, I think the president should clean house at the Southern District of New York. Start over again. See if we can get some honest prosecutors. But I ask people to be patient because these giant bureaucracies, it's kind of like turning around an ocean liner. They are starting to clean house, though. The officer in charge of the U.S. Space Force base in Greenland was stripped of her command after she sent out a mass email denigrating Vice President J.D. Vance and the Trump administration days after the vice president visited Greenland. The Space Force announced late Thursday that it had removed Colonel Susanna Myers as leader of the Pituffik Space Base for a loss of confidence in her ability to lead. Myers, who assumed control of the 821st Space Base Group last July under Joe Biden, fired off a message to the troops in her command stating that the views discussed by Vice President Vance during his visit to Greenland on March 28th are not reflective of space base. Who is she to make policy for the U.S. government? I spent the weekend thinking about Friday's visit, the actions taken, the words spoken, and how it must have affected each of you, she wrote to the troops under her command. I do not presume to understand current politics, but what I do know is the concerns of the U.S. administration discussed by the vice president on Friday are not reflective of this space base. Now, the truth is, this email could have been written by some pink-haired, heavily tattooed and pierced leftist in any HR department in San Francisco, and it ultimately led to her being canned, and not a moment too soon. Denmark, as you know, holds Greenland as a colony, and it is of strategic importance to the United States. President Trump has made this abundantly clear, but during his trip, Vice President Vance slammed Denmark for not doing a good job by the people of Greenland and called out Copenhagen for its not investing more in the world's largest island's security architecture. The Trump administration has been vigilant in removing military offers that insist on being woke and counter-signaling the chain of command. This is generally known as treason, and people are court-martialed for it. Yesterday, I mentioned the fact that Navy Vice Admiral Shoshana Chatfield, who refused to put up the portraits of President Trump and Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth at NATO headquarters, was also relieved of her duty earlier this week. Chatfield also held an all-hands meeting in which she said, "We will wait them out for 4 years." Well, you ought to be in the brig for 4 years. That's my opinion. Trump has fired 10 generals and admirals since taking office. On Thursday, General Timothy Haug, the head of the National Security Agency and the U.S. Cyber Command, was removed. Admiral Lisa Franchetti, the first woman to become Chief of Naval Operations, was also canned. Actions to determine the chain of command or to subvert President Trump's agenda will not be tolerated by the Department of Defense. That's what Sean Parnell, an assistant to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, said for the record. Trump and Hegseth have been extremely vocal in their insistence that so-called woke policies are dead in this administration. And they've been very vigorously removing leaders who promote diversity, equity, inclusion, and to also move to erase these DEI programs and online content. The U.S. Naval Academy in Annapolis ditched almost 400 books from its library, all of it with this DEI commentary. Interestingly enough, migrant crossings at our border, but actually migrant crossings through the once overrun Darien Gap have plummeted 99% since President Trump's border crackdown. Now, the Darien Gap, not to be confused with Darien, Connecticut, is in Panama. This is where migrants come first before they head towards our southern border. The migrant crossings through the once overrun and extremely dangerous Darien Gap have plummeted, as I say, 99% since President Trump began his enforcement of our border policies. So now we're down to just 408 migrants recorded traversing the Panamanian jungle path this past February, compared to crossings at 37,166 illegals in February of 2024 under Joe Biden. Before and after photos of the Darien Gap show the small river port of Las Blancas inundated with hordes of immigrants just a year ago. Now, a aerial photo of that same area shows that there's nobody there. Panamanian authorities allowed an average of 16,400 migrants to make this grueling trek every week at the peak of illegal immigration in the country of 2022. Now, if you want a little comic relief, Adam Schiff, a.k.a. Pencil Neck, a.k.a. Shifty Shift, unfortunately the senator from California, now says he's going to investigate whether anyone in the Trump administration or the Trump family was involved in illegal insider trading prior to the president's announcements when it came to tariffs. Senator Schiff, if you want to investigate insider trading, let me suggest you start with Nancy Pelosi. And while you're at it, take a good look at Dan Goldman. You, my friend, represent the party of insider trading. You're tuned in and listening to the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks. Whatever you do, don't go away because, well, we'll be right back.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Netflix. 3 couples, 4 vacations, a lot to unpack. Watch The 4 Seasons, a new series starring comedy favorites Tina Fey, Steve Carell, Will Forte, Coleman Domingo, and more in a hilarious and heartfelt love letter to long-term relationships. Based on the original Alan Alda film. Watch The 4 Seasons, streaming now only on Netflix.
You guys, I just found the most incredible Mother's Day gift. It's called Goldbelly. Goldbelly is this amazing site where you can get the most iconic foods from restaurants all across the U.S., shipped anywhere in the country for free in time for Mother's Day. We're talking cakes from Ina Garten and Martha Stewart, Magnolia Bakery's famous banana pudding, and New York bagel brunches. Make Mother's Day perfect with Goldbelly.com and get 20% off your first order with promo code MOM. That's Goldbelly.com, promo code MOM.
Faraday presenta Ojos con Alergia y Picazón contra el jardinero. Y el ganador es Faraday Extra Fuerte. Para aliviar la picazón de los ojos por alergia, actúa más rápido y supera a Claritin y Flonase aún a las 24 horas. Faraday, adelante.
This episode is brought to you by Principles. Are there limits to the U.S. government's debt growth? What will happen if the debts are not curtailed? What should policymakers or investors do? Those are urgent questions that legendary investor and New York Times bestselling author Ray Dalio addresses in his new book, How Countries Go Broke, The Big Cycle. The book comes out in June and is available for pre-order today, wherever books are sold.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
Welcome back. We're in the Stone Zone. So, Breonna Rivers, the woman caught on video sucker punching a pro-life activist during a street interview, has been arrested by the New York Police Department. Rivers has been charged with one count of second-degree assault for her actions, which some might view as a slap on the wrist. She's set to be arraigned next Thursday afternoon. Savannah Anteo, the pro-life activist who was punched by Rivers, celebrated news of her attacker's arrest on social media. Just got word from detectives Breonna J. Rivers was arrested. God is good, she wrote on Instagram. Savannah was on the streets of Harlem conducting interviews with New Yorkers for a video entitled, "What Does Planned Parenthood Do? Perception versus Reality," when Rivers decided to end her interview by punching Savannah in the face. Savannah was rushed to the hospital where she received stitches for her injuries. Rivers is now raising money for herself on GoFundMe and has already pulled in nearly $9,000. Now, this is a disturbing trend on the left, the financing of outright violence. Carmelo Anthony, 17-year-old that murdered a white student at a track meet, has raised $300,000 online from left-wing radicals. The recent survey, which we spoke about just days ago, showed that half of the left-leaning people in America said that they could justify the murder of President Trump and his government efficiency advisor, Elon Musk. I remember after January 6th, if you use the word fight in speech, as in fight for America, they would accuse you of fomenting violence. But now, more than half of the liberals in the country say it's acceptable to destroy Tesla dealerships. They support Luigi Mangione, the 26-year-old accused of gunning down United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. And all of this according to a new survey released by the Rutgers-based Network Contagion Research Institute. So the polls show that liberals now think assassination and political violence targeting Trump and Musk is being increasingly normalized. The left-leaning social media platform Blue Sky plays a significant and predictive role in amplifying this radical notion. If you watched Cory Booker in his epic act of demagoguery on the U.S. Senate floor, he kept talking, inciting violence, in my opinion. Kamala Harris tells us she was completely shocked about when she found out she lost to Trump, wanted to know whether she should request a recount. Kamala Harris and Tim Walsh are both shocked, I guess. The story of the reaction to finding out they lost is finally being told by a woman named Amy Parnes, who co-authored the book Fight, Inside the Wildest Battle for the White House. Turns out that Kamala Harris is in such a belief she thought she needed a recount. Amazing. These people never surprise me. Anyway, you're tuned in to the Stone Zone on the Red Apple Audio Networks, and conservative organizer, entrepreneur, and businessman Clay Clark, who ran the Reawaken America Tour, joins me coming up. So whatever you do, don't touch that dial.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This podcast is supported by Progressive, a leader in RV insurance. RVs are for sharing adventures with family, friends, and even your pets. So if you bring your cats and dogs along for the ride, you'll want Progressive RV insurance. They protect your cats and dogs like family by offering up to $1,000 in optional coverage for vet bills in case of an RV accident, making it a great companion for the responsible pet owner who loves to travel. See Progressive's other benefits and more when you quote RV insurance at Progressive.com today. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Pet injury is an additional coverage and subject to policy terms.
This episode is brought to you by Loom by Atlassian. Are you feeling stuck at work? Get your team unstuck with Loom video messaging and move work forward. Use Loom to simultaneously record both your screen and yourself to share a quick update, provide feedback, train a colleague, and everything in between. Plus, add Loom AI to your meetings for instant written notes and recordings. Try Loom today at Loom.com. That's LOOM.com.
Parents of tweens, if you're familiar with far-off drop-offs...
Dad, stop, right here.
Or get DMs about what's for dinner, you may be experiencing tween milestones. For your son or daughter, these can start at age 9. HPV vaccination, a type of cancer prevention against certain HPV-related cancers, can start then too.
For most, HPV clears on its own. But for those who don't clear the virus, it can cause certain cancers later in life.
Embrace this phase. Help protect them in the next.
Ask their doctor today about HPV vaccination. Brought to you by Merck.
This episode is brought to you by Buick. When you have 4 new tires, every drive feels fresh. Right now, buy 3 select tires and get 1 for just $1 during the Buick Certified Service Fresh Start Tire Event. Visit Buick.com/service offers or see dealer for full details. At participating U.S. GM dealers only, highest or equal value tire will be $1. Offer ends 5/31/2025. Not available with other offers.
This is the Stone Zone with Roger Stone.
They went after a guy named Roger Stone who's sitting in the office. And I'll say this in front of Roger, he's no baby. And right now he's cleaner than anybody in this place. No, they treated him very unfairly.
Now, get him his own. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
I really continue to find this story amazingly shocking. Kamala Harris on election night was in such disbelief that she lost. She was completely shocked, as was her running mate, Tim Walz. Boy, was that guy a buffoon. They spent the night in their hotel rooms stunned at what happened. Walz said he had no words. People were kind of explaining it to him, the same thing to her. And she was like, this according to one of her aides, "Are you sure? Have we done a recount? Should we do a recount?" These new reports say that the Harris campaign was being told things looked good leading up to Election Day, and Harris was convinced in part to expect a huge victory party because she was finally drawing crowds at her rallies. Although we know the crowds often came not to see Harris, but to see concerts from singers like Lady Gaga. Kamala Harris was looking at her crowd size, and they felt the vibe was strong, and people saying, "Oh, we have more boots on the ground. We're doing better in fundraising." The whole thing was a psyop from the beginning. America made the right decision, and which why we are entering the golden age. Joining me now, Clay Clark, who is, I like to call him an impresario, a political organizer, an advocate for God and country, a fine Christian gentleman, an entrepreneur and businessman, and the man who came up with the Reawaken America Tour, along with my good friend, General Michael Flynn. I was honored to be on that tour. I didn't make every stop, but I certainly made most of them. Was perhaps one of the greatest experiences of my life. Clay Clark, welcome to the Stone Zone.
Roger, I can tell you nobody's ever used the word impresario in my life before you, and I had to look it up, and it says an impresario, is a person who manages or organizes entertainment events such as concerts, tours, and theatrical productions. So as always, you are one of the most accurate describers of current events, so I do humbly accept your description as an impresario.
Now, here's something you don't know. There's something called an impresario hat. New York City Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia used to wear one. There's kind of like a cowboy hat, but a little different. I'm going to get you one. I'm going to go online and find you one. You organized the Reawaken America Tour. We went all the way across the country with truly inspiring messages. I think we were effective. This was the greatest lineup of pro-freedom, pro-God, pro-Constitution, pro-truth, pro-health freedom speakers, I think, in history. But, Clay, I have to ask you directly, is America waking up, and are they finding God?
I really do hope that America is waking up. I would say that the things that would indicate to me that people are finding God is more and more people are telling me that Bible sales are hitting all-time highs. Bible Christian bookstores are reporting that Bible sales are hitting all-time highs. So that, to me, Roger, that's a sign of people seeking the truth. Now, as far as other signs, I think President Trump is signing executive orders at a rate that are kind of dizzying for the average American to keep up. But yet I think that there's a tenacity. The average person wants to know what is happening. They're following Trump's executive orders. They're looking to see how those things impact their lives and their business. So I would say, one, the fact that Bible sales are going up, that's incredible. Two, the fact that people are talking about these executive orders. So many times when somebody gets in the White House, people lose focus and lose interest. But people are really engaged in the political process right now.
Clay, one of the great public services I think you have done has been to expose the World Economic Forum and its leader, Klaus Schwab, who does a half-decent impression of Henry Kissinger when he speaks, and his sidekick. But now I read that Klaus is retiring. I think, Clay, you have driven him into retirement.
That would be nice. I can tell you there's a guy named Borge Brinde, who is the president and chief executive officer of the World Economic Forum, and he is going to be taking over Klaus Schwab's role. And Borge can't get through a sentence without talking about the new world order. Those are the words he actually uses when communicating. So I don't know if we're getting an upgrade there, Roger. I can tell you, Klaus Schwab typically sounds like he's on the verge of falling asleep while talking. He'll say things such as like, "The great reset is," and you're going, is this a computer loading slow or is this a man talking? So he's being replaced by at least somebody with some energy. But this guy Borge, he is obsessed with talking about the New World Order. So we'll see what happens.
Look, I think you can see the story across the world. The pro-freedom, the guy who came in first in the election in Romania, they're not going to let him run. Marie Le Pen, leading in the national polls in France for their upcoming presidential election, they're throwing her in jail over some minor election finance violation that they let some other globalists off the hook for only months ago. They want to cancel the elections in Poland. They're failing across the globe. I think we have the slow motion collapse of Europe. It's interesting that countries like the UK, like France, like Germany, that have opened themselves onto completely unrestricted immigration are literally on the verge of collapse, and the forces of freedom are on the move. This is Donald Trump has started something that is not just in the United States. This comeback, which I think is the greatest comeback in American political history, is igniting a new spirit of, yes, nationalism. Nationalism is defined as people who love the country they live in. They call us white Christian nationalists as if that's an insult. Well, yes, I'm white. I love people of other races. I'm a Christian. I love God. I love Jesus Christ. And I'm a nationalist. I love the country I live in, the United States of America. They throw it at us like it's some kind of an insult. I wear it proudly. It doesn't mean that you're a bigot. Doesn't mean you're a racist. Doesn't mean that you're a white supremacist. That's name calling. And it is beneath the dignity of political discourse that we should be having. Now, you spent a lot of time with the president and with the extremely popular Tim Tebow as someone who has a long history of assessing, shall we call it, political horseflesh. He looks like a winner to me. I would really hope that eventually, and by the way, he spoke recently at my church here at Coral Ridge Presbyterian. He's an inspiring public speaker. I really hope that he will run for public office. What do you think?
Well, I can tell you this, Roger. I know that Tim Tebow is the real deal backstage when he comes to our conferences. You've been to our offices before in the Thrive Time Show headquarters, and so Tim and I have become friends, and Tim now comes into these business conferences that we do. And by the way, your listeners can learn more about them at thrivetimeshow.com. We have Tim Tebow joining us June 5th and 6th in Tulsa, Oklahoma. June 5th and 6th. It's a business conference where we teach marketing, branding, sales, finance, legal, workflows, the whole thing. We also have Eric Trump, President Trump's son, is joining us in September. So if you're listening to today's show and you want to take your business to the next level, if you want to make America great again starting with your own business, I would highly recommend you go to thrivetimeshow.com. But backstage, when talking to Tim just has an unbelievable confidence that God is good, that the Bible is the irrefutable word of God, and that if he puts his trust and confidence in his Lord and Savior Jesus Christ and does his very best to adhere to God's laws, his life is going to go well. And I'm telling you, Tim Tebow is, in fact, the real deal.
So there's a huge amount of disinformation that I'm seeing regarding President Trump's plans for economic revival in this country. The centerpiece, but not the entire mass of it, is to get an even playing field when it comes to trade and to subject nations who have been slapping tariffs on us to put tariffs on them. And it's working. The Mexicans dropping their tariffs. The Canadians now ready to talk. They're over since yesterday when Scott Bessent, who I think may be the single greatest Secretary of the Treasury since Alexander Hamilton, very calming to the U.S. markets. Yesterday he said there were 98 nations in line to begin individual negotiations. I happen to know, based on some phone conversations this morning, that number is now 209 nations ready to sit down and make a deal. Donald Trump, the greatest deal maker of all time. If you haven't read The Art of the Deal, maybe you should. I guarantee you Chairman Xi is reading it right now, even as we speak. What do you think of the president's economic plans? And I know you agree with me. The last thing I want to see are the panicans, the panicans, those who don't want to stay the course, those who want to fold. Now is the time, in my opinion, for strength, for resilience, to persistence, and to stay the course. But Clay, I'm asking you what you think.
Well, okay, so deregulation. First off, if you're an entrepreneur out there, nothing slows down innovation more than regulation. And so President Trump has done his best to do common sense things like bringing back a shower head that actually emits enough water to have an enjoyable shower. So there you go. President Trump has taken the shackles and the chains off of the oil industry. So the oil industry is moving. I mean, the oil industry is moving. It's taken off. President Trump has gone very aggressively about talking about let's bring back American manufacturing through imposing these tariffs. And so he's doing that. And then back to the whole gold conversation, President Trump has acknowledged that he knows that the BRICS countries, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, they are hoarding gold in preparation to introduce a new currency system designed to rival the U.S. dollar's supremacy. And President Trump has addressed it, and he sees it as a threat, and he's dealing with it. So all I can say is President Trump is one of the only people that I've ever seen who can tell you what he's going to do and then do it. I mean, he wrote a book called The Art of the Deal that explains to you his negotiation strategies, and he's doing it right now. So, I mean, President Trump tells you what he's going to do. He's doing it. And I think what's happening is you're seeing confidence in the average American buyer right now. You're seeing clients of mine there, Roger, that build homes. They're telling me that they're having more and more people inquire about building a new home. You're beginning to see in the mortgage industry more and more people reach out applying to get a mortgage. So you're seeing indicators that would indicate that the American people are having a restored confidence with the direction America's heading. So I really do hope that America can really get unstuck. And as an entrepreneur, I'd love to see America's economy thriving again.
Clay, all politics is local, so I got to ask you this question. You have an attorney general in your home state of Oklahoma, a gentleman by the name of Gentner Drummond. You got to wonder what his parents were thinking. But in any event, he is ostensibly a Republican, but he's really what we call a Republican in name only, because he was a major financial contributor in 2020 to Joe Biden. Now, I saw him at the White House the other day, not by himself, but with a larger group of attorney generals, and he posted some pro forma praise for President Trump as if people don't know that he is a wolf in sheep's clothing. Tell me what you think of Attorney General Drummond, who's now made pretty clear he's going to be a candidate for governor. And, well, is there somebody down there in the Sooner State who can beat him?
Well, I can tell you this. The U.S. Attorney General in Oklahoma, you kind of look at who he replaced. His predecessor was a guy that was very conservative and becoming more conservative. So in Oklahoma, we had a conservative person in that position, and then Drummond was able to get into office in a way where I think he was very deceptive, and that most people thought he was much more conservative than he was. So I think a lot of Oklahomans actually got duped. I think a lot of Oklahomans didn't know what they were voting for or who they were voting for. You know it, but this would be the Oklahoma Attorney General John O'Connor.
Great man.
This is a guy who's a friend of mine, and John O'Connor was very much conservative, and he was actually beginning to voice concerns about a lot of core issues plaguing our nation. But Drummond worked his way into a position where he appeared to be a moderate. He came across as a moderate. I would say if you look into his worldview, it seems very similar to that of Mitt Romney. If anybody knows Mitt Romney appealed to the base as being a moderate. He marketed himself as a moderate, but he actually had a very, I would consider to be leftist worldview. And so I think the same thing's going on in Oklahoma. So as far as can anybody beat him, I don't know that. And I would say you're more in tune to the political landscape than anybody I've ever met. President Trump has actually said that at an event, that you are the most politically in tuned person he's ever heard before. I mean, you study politics, but I can tell you that your observations are correct, and that Oklahoma currently finds itself without a conservative in that position.
Yeah, John O'Connor, your former Attorney General, I think a very, very good man. I hope he runs again. Pardon me. It remains to be seen. I think that Drummond, first of all, he's extremely wealthy, so he was a self-funder, and he promulgated this myth that he was a conservative when, in fact, he was a supporter of Joe Biden. There's a number of I think, good potential candidates. I'm thinking of State Senator Mike Mazzei. I also like your superintendent of education, Ryan Walters. He's a good man. My fear, in all honesty, is that the pro-MAGA candidates will split the Trumpian vote, letting a rhino like Drummond slip in, and I would hate to see that happen. So I hope one candidate emerges to lead the conservative wing of the party. Folks, if you're just tuning in, we're talking to my favorite conservative impresario, businessman, organizer, a Christian leader, and a good and loyal friend, Clay Clark. Whatever you do, don't touch that dial, because we'll be back with a bit more of Clay Clark on the other side.
The Stone Zone, entertaining and informative
on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
This episode is brought to you by Temptations Cat Treats. Your cat will come running for the perfectly irresistible Temptations Creamy Puree and Temptations Lickable Spoon Cat Treats. The best time to feed lickable cat treats to your cat is anytime. Feed by hand for a playful moment, in a bowl for a creamy treat, or as a topper to make mealtime fun. Visit TemptationsTreats.com to learn more.
Anyone can follow. It takes something special to be an original, which is why the 2025 Lincoln Navigator SUV arrives with new ways of surrounding you in luxury, including the ultra-wide 48-inch panoramic display and the multi-sensory Lincoln Rejuvenate experience. A true original never stops evolving. So meet the 2025 Navigator, the original that's all new and better than ever. Learn more at Lincoln.com. Lincoln and Navigator are trademarks of Ford or its affiliates.
You need a vacation, so why not come play in LA? Fill your days with fun and let Los Angeles dazzle you with iconic landmarks, epic scenery, and stunning coastlines. And when the sun goes down, it's the perfect place to enjoy world-class dining and nightlife. Let play lead the way and soak up all this city has to offer. Start planning your LA getaway now at visitcalifornia.com.
Ladies, you'll end up shopping for your guy's deodorant, right? So try Degree's Original Cool Rush. You see, last year, Degree changed the formula, and men were mad. One guy even started a petition. So Degree admitted they messed up and brought the Original Cool Rush scent back. It's clean, crisp, and actually smells like someone you want to cuddle. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So toss one in your cart and find out why it's the best-selling men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory.
This is the Stone Zone. Now, get in the zone. It's the Stone Zone. Here's Roger Stone.
And we're back. We're talking to Clay Clark. We've got about 4 minutes left. Clay, your Twitter feed has revealed a number of stories that went under the radar for many, many years. For example, you mentioned earlier the stockpiling of gold amassed by the Communist Chinese. I also see that you've talked about the future of household robots. What do you think is the most under the radar story you've come up with? And then, before we leave, I want you to tell people once more how they can get the Reawaken America experience in your upcoming programs.
Well, okay, so first off, Klaus Schwab had this thing called the Great Reset or the Fourth Industrial Revolution, this plan. One might call it a one world government. One might call it the New World Order. One might call it the Fourth Industrial Revolution. One might call it the Great Reset. Well, that plan involves 5 components. One is putting a chip in your head. It's not something I'm excited about, but Klaus Schwab is excited about it. 2 is it's to introduce self-driving cars that drive you where they want to take you. 3, it's to mass scale introduce mRNA technology via vaccine. 4th, it's to introduce programmable money. And 5th, it's to take jobs away from most humans and replace them with humanoid robots. So that continues to be the agenda. And Roger, you know this, I called our events the Great Reawakening versus the Great Reset. So I encourage everybody out there, when possible, don't put a chip in your head. Don't put a chip in your head. And then, thing number 2 that falls under the radar is, China's been accumulating gold for the past 100 years. Did I say 100 years? Yes, 100 years. China's been accumulating gold. Russia's been accumulating gold. Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. The BRICS nations have been accumulating gold. For what? They want to introduce a new reserve currency to rival the U.S. dollar. So if you're listening to today's show and you have access to money and you're trying to protect your wealth, gold has always been a safe haven to protect your wealth. But I'll just tell the listeners this. I've been buying gold since 2005, and at that time, gold was about $450 an ounce, and I started buying gold because it was recommended to me by a friend of mine who owned a bank. And he said, you should take a quarter of your wealth and invest in precious metals. And I've done that faithfully since that time. And now gold's at $3,000 an ounce. Folks, in 1971, when Richard Nixon was in office, gold was $44 an ounce. Then 2005, gold was $450 an ounce. And now today, gold is at $3,200 an ounce. So that's really, Roger, just my 2 items that I believe are flying underneath the radar.
All right. We have to wrap it up there. One more time, give us the website where people can go to find out about your upcoming programs.
Yes, sir. Join Eric Trump, join Tim Tebow at my in-person 2-day interactive business workshops at thrivetimeshow.com, thrivetimeshow.com. Again, that's thrivetimeshow.com. Thank you, Roger Stone.
All right. Thank you, Clay Clark. And to my listeners out there, until we meet again, God bless you and Godspeed. And thank you for joining us in the Stone Zone.
Thanks for listening to the Stone Zone with Roger Stone. You can hear the Stone Zone with Roger Stone weeknights at 8 on 77 WABC. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode so you never have to wonder,
what the heck is going on here?